So, Angela, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so excited to catch up. I'm just going to set the scene a little bit for the audience listening in. So, Angela and I met through Intuition Lab a few years ago. It's an online community and intuition development program run by Kim Chesney, who was also on the show. And Angela and I both have integrated intuition into our practices. So, mine, of course, being feng shui, Angela being a Reiki practitioner. So I want to start there, Angela, if you want.
Yeah.
Well, first, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
So maybe before jumping into some of the intuitive talk, could you give us just a little insight into Reiki, maybe for those that have never heard of it or have heard of it and are just not sure what it is?
I get this a lot and I try to keep it really practical. So Reiki, the word Reiki means universal life force energy. And in other, cultures, it's chi, prana, ki, mana. There's religions that have a name for it, but essentially it's the essence of life in all things. So as the Reiki practitioner, through the training that I've received, I'm calling in that essence of life. I'm calling in the Reiki. I'm calling in the universal life force energy. I'm like an empty conduit and I'm sending it directly to the client's body. The client's body receives the energy and heals itself. So Reiki practitioners are not technically healers. We can send the energy in, but your body's taking that energy and it knows exactly what to do with it. So life force energy is in all of us. It's around all of us. It's in all things. And the practitioner's kind of just pulling it in. I like to say, if you can imagine a hairdryer, the hairdryer does not create the air around. It pulls it in, focuses it where it needs to go, and it's more effective that way. And a Reiki practitioner is very similar to that.
That was such a great explanation. I've never heard it that way.
There's a lot of layers to it. So I explain it in a way that they can understand it very plainly and they can feel empowered by it because their body's doing the healing. I'm not using their energy. They're not taking my energy. It's coming from a very good, clean place. It's going right into the body. It heals mental, physical, and emotional. And it does much more than that. I've seen all kinds of things through my 2 years, but it's been great. It's been life-changing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next. So what do you commonly see people coming in for that would want to get a Reiki treatment?
Yeah, and especially people when they come for their first time, it's stress relief and relaxation. And the primary purpose of Reiki is stress relief, right? Because when we're stressed out, we are so far away from our true authentic selves. So here we are, the true self is in the center of who you are. It's the way you were created to be, your authentic true self. And in life, we can't help it but take on stress, and I call them stress jackets because I envision them like layers, kind of layers of an onion, or call them stress jackets over the body. So expensive car payment, you have a stress jacket. A family member who's ill, you have a stress jacket. A job you don't love, you have a stress jacket. And pretty soon you're so far away from the core and the essence of your true self that you can't feel yourself. You're just so stressed out. And then without removing these layers of stress, it can get compounded. And then you start operating at this really stressed out level all the time. Physical problems start to happen. Mental breakdown starts to happen. Emotional outbursts. You can't control how you're feeling because you're not at the core of who you are. So not just Reiki, but a lot of energetic healing modalities. Acupuncture is really good. A deep, beautiful massage is really good. Meditation is beautiful, but finding ways to peel away these stress jackets. So in the practice, when people come in, especially for this first time, they're looking for relaxation. They're looking for stress relief. And they usually get that and a lot more.
As you're talking about that, I'm thinking, you mentioned a few examples of stress jackets, and I was like, check.
Yep. Yep.
I have a couple.
And it's
of
normal.
them.
Yeah, it's normal. We can't stay, I'm going to probably misspeak, but I don't even think Buddha can stay in that true self all the time. It's work, right? But once you get the taste of the true self, then you work to be there longer and more often, as often as you can be. But life happens. So that stress is normal. We have to find these modalities to release the stress.
Yeah. So how did you get into doing this?
Super long story. I'll try to keep it as short as possible, but it's a good story. So I received Reiki in 2014 for the first time. I had a profound personal experience, and that's kind of what kept me interested. I've been into spiritual things my entire life. When I was 14, my best friend, mom, gave me a book called Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it changed my whole understanding of energy and the energy exchange between people. He explains in the book, it's kind of this journey through the Amazon to find these hidden scrolls, and there's a big story along with it. But my takeaway from the book was the energy exchange. So eventually the main character learns to see energy as people around him are teaching him to do. And he can see when someone's arguing, they're kind of yelling at the person and the energy is being sucked from the person that they're yelling at and going into the person that's doing the yelling. And then the person that's depleted of the energy that just got yelled at turns and goes and fights with somebody else or yells at somebody else because they're trying to get their energy back. And he could see this very clearly. And then I started to look for that in real life and I would see it happen. So that blew my mind. I'm 14 and I read this book and I've reread that book over the years and it does not get old. I highly recommend it. I had always kind of been into energy and, the spiritual side of things, but then you couldn't just hop on Google and find any information. So it had to come to me through word of mouth or a book or a magazine. So probably in like 2010, 2012, I read an article about Reiki and what it was and what it does. And I was just super interested, but there was nowhere around me that had places to go and receive Reiki. And then a place nearby opened up and a woman came and she was a Reiki practitioner and I booked with her. And what I didn't realize at that same time, so I booked with her just kind of, I was curious. I had heard about it years before in the magazine article and I just wanted to go. But at the same time, I was in the middle of selling my first business, which was vintage and antique furniture, consignment furniture. And it was super stressful. I was working with a business broker and I had to keep everything very quiet. So I couldn't tell my employees. I couldn't tell the customers. I felt like every day I went in, I felt like I was lying to them. And I wore that, but I didn't know it. I didn't know how that stress was so compounded in my body. And I didn't correlate the two things. I just felt like this is just a stressful environment, but I didn't know what was happening to my body. And at the same time, my husband and I were trying to have our second child and it was not happening. So it was like a year and a half. We had gone through all the medical testing and I said, I'm just going to give myself a break. And after the summer, we'll figure out what we're going to do if we're still not pregnant. So I booked this Reiki appointment. I went. It was the night of there had been an ice storm the night before. And we went into the room. The room was ice cold. I mean, like frigid, ice cold. She even went and got a space heater and put it in the room because it was so cold. And I didn't know what to expect. And, I went in, I said, I'm just interested. I just want to try it. I didn't tell her anything that was going on because I didn't realize how the stress was affecting me. And I mentioned that we were, hoping to have another child, but I didn't make a big deal about it. So I remember she sat behind me and I could hear her rubbing her hands together. And then she put her hands over my ears and the room, remember, was ice cold. And her hands, again, I'm going to say hair dryers, but her hand felt like hair dryers, the heat from her hands blowing on my ears. And I remember being like, what is going on? I almost wanted to open my eyes to see if she had put some sort of heating device next to my head. So I went through the whole Reiki, it was very relaxing, kind of in and out of sleep, kind of like when you get a massage and you're kind of all there and then you kind of drift off and you come back and it was beautiful. And at the end, she just thanked me for coming. There was no explanation, no, further talk. And I went home and I really didn't think much of it. And then the next morning I woke up and my son was 2 at the time. My husband went off to work. And I remember I sat down to play like trains with him or something. I was like, oh my gosh, like I just want to look out the window. I just want to stare at these trees out the window. And because I had been operating at such a high stress level for so long, I was uncomfortable being relaxed. And it didn't connect right away. I called my husband. I was like, you need to come home. I can't watch our son today. I'm too chill out. I don't know what's going on. I feel so uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable being relaxed, which is crazy. And then, I kind of put it together that she had broken my stress wide open. She had gotten me to the core, to the calm, to the peaceful, to the Zen person that I truly was without all those stress jackets. She had taken them all off. And, that day I was really kind of just Zen and out of it. I kept taking my son outside to play in the grass and stuff. And then, I was fine after that. And that's not typical, I have to say. So if you come, you're not going to feel uncomfortable, just so you know. But I think that my stress was so compacted in so many areas of my life that when it was gone, I didn't know what to do. But then I got the taste for the real me. And I was like, you know what? I am peaceful and I am calm and I am Zen when I'm there, all the way there. And then side note, we got pregnant 2 months later. So it was amazing. It was like a year and a half, it's up, and it's not Reiki. I'm not saying Reiki will do that, but she removed the stress. So if you're not into Reiki, do something else. If you're operating at a high stress level, you shouldn't stay there. The body's not meant to be that way. So find something where you can unload that stress in a healthy way.
Yeah. Now, back to the book you had read, I had just witnessed this yesterday between two men. We were pulling out of Lowe's and we were at a stop sign, and these two men were like screaming at each other, like hands up in the air, like, come on, buddy, like the whole thing. And it was so interesting how that author could literally see the energy exchange between two people. I had that in that moment since getting into energy work. Like I've never witnessed that from such a different lens of two people arguing. I would typically probably in the past just brush it off like, oh, what's going on here? Or be all engaged in it, like trying to watch and be a part of it in some way by watching. And really, I found myself for one of the first times, or at least being aware for the first time of just like in that moment, I just wanted to send both of them like love.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And like to me, that's like what Reiki is. Like, it's like sending love, like kind of just bringing it around. And then I did my thing and it just kind of dissipated and everybody went their own way. But that to me is like putting it out in the world, right? Without even having to go for an appointment for something, like just witnessing it in everyday life is just.
But having the awareness. And having the
Yes.
awareness that sending love would be more beneficial than being, a gawker or watching and those
Right.
two men that were screaming probably went home and screamed at somebody else, or probably, got angry in the car at the next person that maybe cut them off. So, I mean, it's hard to do, but finding ways to kind of like block that or let that not come into your energy field is really important too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even as you were saying that too, like when we feel depleted, we're looking for it outside of ourselves in another person. And man, that is so true when it comes to like relationships. I even feel that way as a parent sometimes. And I'm sure you could probably relate, like when I'm getting frustrated with the kids, or, when mama has calmed down, mama's really good at saying, look, that wasn't you guys frustrating me. I obviously need to reset my energy. And, so there are times where in the moment, I'm not so great at managing my frustrations, but I really do try to like rebound with, hey, I realized what I did. And next time, mama's going to work on this. I'm curious, how are you with your kids?
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, I still yell at my kids. People are like, do you ever yell at your kids? Well, of course I do. But it's the same thing. And you know what? I think it's authentic, right? Because if you didn't yell at your kids ever, they would just kind of breeze through and nothing's a big deal. But I do find with the intuition work too, I find that I'm more in touch with my feelings, right? So if I have an outburst, I actually realize it's because the thing before, the thing with my child, the thing earlier upset me and I kind of took it out in this moment. And I'll verbalize that, I'm not actually upset with you and I'm really sorry I just yelled at you. I'm mad because whatever didn't happen the way that I wanted it to. And I'm letting them know that I'm human and I make mistakes and don't put me up on this pedestal. And now my kids, when they make mistakes, my middle daughter especially, she'll come over and she'll go, Mom, my youngest daughter just had a birthday and she got a big present that my middle daughter was kind of jealous of. And I could see her jealousy. And then she just disappeared from the room. And I peeked in her room. I said, what happened? She goes, I had to leave the room because I was getting really jealous and I didn't want to do something mean. I mean, that was mind blowing for her to be able to verbalize her emotions in that way instead of just having the outburst and doing it. So, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but we do try to talk through, the anger or the upset.
Yeah, us too. And it's so beautiful to witness because it's such a different style of parenting than I was raised with. So my daughter is the same way. My son, he's like, not to stereotype a boy, but he is. He's like loud and he doesn't care. And he's just like, he's an Aries too. So he like has a little bit of an anger streak in him. But my daughter, she'll get angry. And then 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, after she comes out, she's like, Mommy, I'm sorry that I said that or I acted that way. And I just love that it's such a validation to me that I'm exhibiting that behavior too.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's so good. So let's jump into the intuition side of things. I noticed you are now like kind of branding 81st and James as intuitive Reiki.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, first I have to say, without doing the intuition work that we both did together, I would not be doing this work at all. So that not only, changed my whole understanding of energy and understanding of self, but it gave me the confidence to kind of step out. Like Kim said to me at one point, I said, I'm so nervous to like put myself out there. And she goes, Angela, you're just stepping out of the spiritual closet. And I say that to people all the time, like, come on out of that spiritual closet. Because, I've been into this stuff forever, but I've kind of kept it to myself because some people don't relate and don't understand. So part of my practice hugely is to keep this practical and to keep it so that anybody feels comfortable coming. But to get to the intuition part, I've started saying intuitive Reiki because I was saying Reiki and intuitive energy work, and that is all true. But the work that I do, the Reiki that I do is 100% intuitive. So there are styles of Reiki that have certain hand positions and they move through the body and it's very systematic. That's kind of like the Western type of Reiki. And the Japanese style is more intuitive. It's listening to the body. The body speaks. And if you get quiet enough, and during COVID, I had all of this time and I meditated every day for at least 20 minutes. And I took these intuition classes and we had homework and we had practice and I had the time. I don't have that much time anymore, but I learned to listen to the body. So when I started with a Reiki client, they're laying on the bodywork table and I start at their head and I just start to listen. And I'll sometimes feel an energetic pull to one side of the body or the other, masculine side, feminine side. And then I listen. Why am I being pulled to the masculine? Sometimes I see words, sometimes I see images, and that's all intuition. There's no woo-woo, like Kim likes to say, or crazy magic with that. That's real. I think everybody has the ability to do this kind of work, tapping in with intuition. Intuition is our oldest friend, right? Intuition has that voice that when we hear it, we know with our intuition. And I just want everybody to have the ability to tap in there because, everybody has, oh, I knew that was going to happen. I thought that was going to happen. I thought I should do this. But it's really more a focused, direct energy deep into that true self. It's such a vital tool that I use that I couldn't do the work that I'm doing without it because I trust everything that I'm hearing and I trust everything that I'm seeing. And when I'm giving Reiki, I'm writing down everything that's coming up. So at the end of the session, I spend about 10 or 15 minutes with the client and we go over everything. And I tell them everything that came up. And it's very rare for someone to tell me, oh, no, that doesn't make any sense. And, I welcome that though, because then that if someone says, no, that doesn't relate or it doesn't make any sense, then that means I need to sharpen my tools. So I tell people, just be honest, I'm not offended in any way. And I'm truly not. I want to give them, the best information that their body wants to tell them in that day and the things that are important.
I'm doing the same thing with the home. And kind of like you were saying, the term feng shui, there's a part of me that wants to kind of redirect that a little bit because there's so many different schools of thought, number one, okay? But also the practice that I'm practicing, which is Black Hat Sect. It has a lot of influence from Buddhism, Tibet, and Chinese. But it is probably one of the most mindful practices because it is very intuitive and not just from me being the practitioner, but from the client. So I'm curious,
Yes.
do you, in your sessions, do you sort of teach a little bit with your client too, like how they can sort of tap into their intuition? Because that's what I'm doing, like if we're on a consultation and we're walking through space and we're looking at objects and we're holding objects and I'm pointing out art and it's more like, tell me about that, kind of guiding them instead of saying, well, you shouldn't have that piece of art because it's a feng shui rule, right? Like it's not about that. It's more, tell me about that. And then it's just more of a conversation, but I find it's really intuitive led.
Yeah. So I can tell people your masculine side is on overdrive and your task lists and your to-do lists, you need to kind of calm all that down. And that's fine, but they need to have the tools, right? So I'm listening for not only what's coming up, but how I can help them. So that's part of like the homework. I don't like to give homework, but I'll say, I'm really seeing you need to be grounded. If you can get outside and garden, that's the best thing for you, but do it barefoot. You need to have your hands, don't wear gloves. You need to have your hands in the soil and you need to be barefoot on the ground. So I kind of give them, little tips and tricks of things that they can do based on what their intuitive body is telling me.
Are there things that people can do at home that is considered Reiki? Like, can you do Reiki on yourself?
Yeah, 100%. My kids do Reiki on me. My middle daughter does Reiki on me. The others ask me for it all the time. And I'm really hoping to develop a class for like preteens just to kind of empower them to know that they have the power of healing within their body because we truly all do. I've been trained in a style of Reiki called Usui Reiki and I do Karuna Reiki, but I pull away from that a little bit because the intuitive is so much more important than the structure of Reiki. And with kids, the way that I would explain it is when you fall and you get hurt, what's the first thing that you do? You take your hands and you put it to the injury, or your mom puts her hands on your injury, or dad, or whoever is taking care of you, or whoever's there. And that's your natural instinct is to heal yourself, to use your hands, right? So Reiki is all about using your hands. You can also beam Reiki. You can send distance Reiki because there's no time and space. It's just energy being sent. So for kids to understand that they have the power within them to heal, I think is huge. And I'm really hoping to develop something with that.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, especially for that, like you said, getting into those teenage years when we start to question everything. We question our parents, we question ourselves, we question who we're friends with. So I think
Yep.
just learning how to tap in and calm yourself down, I'd be into that.
Yeah.
class.
And I think in those years too, you kind of start to live outside your body more. You can kind of get away from the true self because you're kind of testing on these different personalities or trying out different new friend groups or a new style of hair or whatever. So you're kind of living more outward. So kind of bringing that power back inward for that age group, I think would be so vital.
Yeah, for sure. I usually like to ask guests about the mind, body, home connection, and what they think that means for them. And, do you have your home set up in a way that supports maybe your spiritual practice, or do you have sacred space at home? Like, what does home mean to you as part of our holistic well-being?
So I don't like clutter. I don't like a lot of excess. I don't like storage. I'm not a keeper, and my husband's more of a keeper. I do have bins for each of my kids for their important things that they want to save. So they know I have those. But overall, I want the home to just be a beautiful space that when you walk in, you feel calm and you feel like you want to be there and you're connected. So I actually work with a few healers, and one of them has gone through and done a template on my house to kind of cultivate all of the things that my husband and I want for the space. I used to work out of my home. I have a back room and I used to work there. So she did it in that space just to keep the energy there. We don't want anything spilling over into the house. And then I said, I just offered you the whole house. And we did feel a change. We did feel it's almost like someone opened all the windows and just kind of let out the air. And now we're kind of rebringing in what we want in that new air and the new space. But I think, the home is such a vital part of your everyday life, right? Because that's where you recharge and that's where you rest and that's where you're with family. That's where you can be alone with your true self. And to have your home reflect, visibly your inside kind of outside, I think it's just so important.
Yes, I agree. Of course, I agree. So,
Yeah.
So you mentioned you had a healer come in. Is there a title, like name?
So I don't even know her title exactly. I just call her healer, but she's from Germany. I've never actually seen what she looks like. So we talk over WhatsApp and she'll ask what we want to bring into the space. She'll use a crystal and she makes a template. She just did it for my new office. And so far it's been wonderful. But I don't even know. Couldn't even tell you what the actual title is of what she does. But I work with all different kinds of healers. I'm always up for trying something new. I work with a shaman that's local, and then she has all these wonderful healers. That's where I found this German one was through the shaman. I'm up for all of it. Why not? And just try and see what resonates and what works and what you align with, because you really never know.
Yeah. 100%. I'm always trying something new.
But even in the home, I'm sure you do this too. You move things around, right? Change things. We try to bring in a lot of earth elements. We travel a lot. So my kids are always grabbing rocks and shells. And I just kind of have bowls of them in different areas of the house. And the kids love it. It's their special thing they contributed to the space. But I'll move it around, and kind of change things up. Just like with the work that I'm doing, once I learned something new, like I just did a chakra healing course and I was working on a sound healing course. And now I bring that into my practice. It's not what I'm doing solely, but it's part of what I do now, because all of these beautiful healing modalities are all tied together. They all have different names and they all have different techniques and different tools and different rules. But really, if you take all of that away, the essence of what truly is there is love, right? The whole purpose is to bring that love back in, push that stress out.
That was so beautifully stated, because it is. There's so much out there, especially now where everybody's got some modality or something. But yeah, and that's the intuition side of it. It's finding what resonates with you and bringing that into your space. So that was really well said. Thank you. So you mentioned you can do distance Reiki, so people can obviously work with you online.
Absolutely.
Online. I don't know why I gave that a past tense, but people can work with you online. How else can people work with you, find you? Tell us.
So my business is called 81st and James, which I think you'll love this, Sarah, but 81st and James are the two streets I grew up on. So for me, Reiki is about coming home. So that's where the name comes from. So 81st and James is my business. I'm online. I have a website. I'm located in Wayne, Pennsylvania. I have an office. I work in a therapist's office there. I do have limited hours because of my kids. So if you go to book and there's not availability, just send me an email and I'll try to find a time to work with you. But my favorite is having new clients. I love to, expose people to this and show them that it's not crazy and it's not that out there. That really like listening and tapping into the body is innate in all of us. But I have a lot of repeat clients too. I'm also on Instagram. I'm on YouTube, trying to do all the things, but my website is probably the best place. I have a newsletter too. If you're interested, I send once a month.
Wonderful. Well, I'll definitely put all of that in the show notes for people to find you. And thank you so much for coming on. It was
Thank
so
you.
good to catch up
This
with
is
you
wonderful.
again. Great.
Yeah, you too. This is so nice. Thank you.